Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, my fine friends. Welcome to the album wrap episode of Season 8 of the Tom Petty Project podcast. I am one of your hosts, Kevin Brown. This is the weekly podcast that digs into the entire Tom Petty catalogue, song by song, album by album, and includes conversations with musicians, fans, and people connected with Tom along the way. So, my co-host for today's episode, as always, is John Paulsen. This is our 8th album wrap, John, already. Halfway.
It's flying by, but this is the album when we started talking about doing this and you agreed to have me on, which I thank you again for doing this. It's been really fun digging into these old albums again. But this is the one that I was looking forward to the most because this is the album that made me a Tom Petty fan. This is the one that really got me into his music and then got me digging into his old music and stuff. So this is a great one to talk about. What an album this is.
I mean, it's just one of the all-time greats, right? You think about 80s, it is late 80s, but you think about 80s rock albums, this is one of the first ones that comes to mind. But I believe that you are going to see a couple of the Heartbreakers fairly soon, and I'm wearing the t-shirt to sort of honor your upcoming gig. You're going to see Mike.
Yeah, Mike the other day posted on his Instagram. This is how I found out about it. I knew they were playing. Mike Campbell and the Dirty Knobs were playing at the Bellwether, which is a great new venue in LA. But he posted on his Instagram, it was the anniversary of the day after the anniversary of Tom's death, which was Monday, I believe. And he posted that they were going to do a special show for that gig on October 20th, which is also Tom's birthday.
Yeah.
And they're going to do a set of their music, the Dirty Knobs, and they're going to do a set of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers music. And apparently Steve Ferrone's been playing drums for the Dirty Knobs on this tour, so he'll be there as well. So 2 of the Heartbreakers will be playing at least. I'm hoping there'll be some special guests. It'd be pretty cool to bring some people out and sing some songs. But yeah, so as soon as that news broke, I went out and bought a couple tickets to make sure I'm there. Not sure exactly who's going to go with me yet. My wife's got to go to a football game at her high school to supervise, so we'll see how that all works out. But really excited to see Mike again. He's one of my favorite, if not my favorite, rock guitarist. So excellent to have them celebrating Tom's music on his birthday.
Yeah, it'd be great to see if Benmont showed up here. Just see if we come and sit in on a couple of songs or something. Would be super cool. But I mean, they played the Farm Aid. They came out and it was the Dirty Knobs complete, and then Benmont came out. So that must have been such a rush, eh? Like it's back to that sort of, 86, 85, 86 time when they were touring with Dylan, and sort of, I'm sure all the sort of the musical flashbacks would have been fantastic for those guys.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, it was a year or two ago, I tweeted out, Stevie Nicks and the Heartbreakers for a tour.
Yeah.
Celebrate Tom's music, play a few Stevie songs. Who says no? Like, I think it would be great. I don't know how the Heartbreakers would feel about it. I don't know how Stevie would feel about it, but that tour would do really well. And I think people would love to come out and hear Tom's music again, sung by one of, the little sister of the band.
Yeah. Well, I think at some point we should do a special episode, because I think that putting together so when they did the Freddie Mercury tribute and they had everyone come out, and I think it'd be fun to sit down and put together, say you pick 10 artists and they're going to do a 3-song set list or 2-song, and then they come out and they do, the Heartbreakers do 20 songs. Well, which artists come and do which songs? That'll be a lot of fun to do too.
Yeah, it'd be kind of like the band Last Waltz.
Yeah.
Having an intermix. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
Okay, so yeah, Full Moon Fever, or as it was originally planned to be called, Songs from the Garage. I say garage. I've slipped into garage now, and I have to force myself to say garage. So
that's one of those interesting words that are pronounced differently over the UK. This is a phenomenal album. I learned a lot digging into it and listening to your podcast about it. And the mythology behind the album. There's so much there. Like, you just comparing it to maybe some of the other Heartbreaker records where we have that little point in time. They did their recordings, they have some B-sides, and they put out their album, they toured, etc. This goes back to George Harrison with Cloud 9. Jeff Lynne slips Tom a tape. Sounds great. He wants to work with Jeff Lynne. They also get on the George Harrison B-side, Handle with Care. I believe it was Handled with Care. And he got all these other guys to sing on it. And that turned into the Wilburys because it was too good of a song. to just be a B-side, and that turns into a whole album and turns into 2 albums. The Roy Orbison Mystery Girl sessions.
Yeah.
Tom co-wrote You Got It, which is a great song. You can totally hear, along with Jeff Lynne, just the whole Full Moon Fever sound sort of starting there.
Yeah.
They also co-wrote California Blue, which is another good song on there. I just want to mention that I realized today that Bono produced a song, She's a Mystery to Me, on that album.
Yeah.
It was written by Bono and the Edge, and I didn't realize that. That's a really good track as well, so people should listen to that. But I think I'm going to put a playlist together of all this stuff that was kind of swirling around before Full Moon Fever, and then add Full Moon Fevers to it, because it's just such a, you can hear it all coming together. And that's what I meant about the mythology. It's like these random meetings, seeing Jeff Lynne on the road and deciding to start working together, and then George Harrison's around, and it turns into this whole band, and then it turns into Full Moon Fever. And Rick Rubin on the documentary summed it up for me. Like, this is basically my experience with it. This was the record that made him a Tom Petty fanatic. He probably listened to the album 1,000 times over the next year or two, and that was basically me. I believe it was a CD. I might have had it on an album, LP as well. But every night before bed, I would put it on and just kind of fall asleep to it. So I listened to this thing over and over and over again. Just love the sound.
Didn't Rubin say that this was the only tape he had in his car for like literally months? I think that was one of the comments he made, right? He said he just listened to it over and over and over. And you think about that though too, like it's different for, if we're us fans, us normal people. But when you got this Rick Rubin at that point is a producer, and he's got his own label and everything. So if he's listened to this album over and over and over again, you got to think there's something in there. And I too wonder about, and we'll talk about this maybe a little bit when we talk about production, because, not everyone loves Jeff Lynne's production, and Rick Rubin's production style is very, very different. It'd be interesting to ask him what he thinks of the production style on this, because, we talked a little bit offline about Mary Jane's Last Dance, which I'm sure will come up at some point. If you think about if Mary Jane's Last Dance had this production aesthetic, it'd be a really different song.
It could be. And one of the things that Tom said on the documentary that was interesting was that he said that Full Moon Fever didn't sound like anything that the Heartbreakers were doing. And the only thing I would say to that is Running Down a Dream sounds to me like a Heartbreaker song. So that's the one thing. But there is a Jeff Lynne element to that as well.
Yeah.
But I think that was a hard rocking. It could have been on a Heartbreakers record, in my opinion. But the rest of it, I mean, it's a lot of acoustic jangly acoustic guitars. The backing vocals with Jeff Lynne.
Yeah.
I mean, amazing sound that was pretty consistent throughout the entire album.
I hear what you're saying. I mean, I think that Running Down a Dream sounds like a Heartbreakers song mainly because of that riff and because of that solo. And we're going to talk about that song, but otherwise, I don't think it does, because the production of it is so Full Moon Fever, Jeff Lynne. And do you think that Stan Lynch would have played that drum part? I don't. I think there would have been a lot more in that drum part. I think it would sound a lot. I mean, you get Benmont on the organ. You know what I mean? So I know exactly what you're saying, because it is a banger. It's Jesus, it's Run Down a Dream. Come on. But I don't know. Well, I don't know.
I would say maybe I consider it a Heartbreakers record because I heard the Heartbreakers play it every time I went to see them play. Yeah. So maybe that was why.
Okay, well let's get into some songs then.
Sure.
I think this is, even though we'll sort of talk about, and maybe we'll talk about how I rank the songs, and you can agree or disagree and tell me where I am wrong. I think it's even if not every song on an album is a 10 out of 10, this is a 10 out of 10 album, because just everything about it works. We've resequenced it and we've nitpicked here and there because that's what we do in this podcast. But man, just as a piece of work, it stands up now as well as it did back then. When you listen through again and you start listening to these songs again, it's like, dear God, this is good. So Free Falling, we kick off side one with Free Falling. A song that was written, a lyric that was written at least, with Tom just messing around trying to make Jeff Lynne laugh. And he came up with that little progression on that crappy little keyboard that Bugs had bought, his roadie, and he said, well, why the hell have you bought this thing? We're never going to use this. Well, Free Falling comes out of it. Incredible.
Yeah, if you write one song with it, it's worth the price of the instrument, right? You hear the opening chords to this, and you're like, this is 1989 or 88 when this is recorded, and you're like, how did this chord progression last this long without being used on another song by another artist. I mean, we're talking about 30, 40 years of rock and roll at this point, and maybe one of the last, amazing chord progressions that was never used, to that point. Like, one of the last original ones. Amazing anthem. One of my favorite, if not my favorite, Tom Petty song. Peaked at 7 on the Hot 100, #1 on the rock chart. I wanted to ask you, why did it only peak at 59 in the UK, Kevin? What is going on? They were like, the UK though was on Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers early. They broke there. But then Free Fall, they don't like that at all. Is it Jeff Lynne? What's going on?
I think, well, the UK loves Jeff Lynne, so it definitely can't be that. I think one thing is that Tom didn't really tour the UK a lot. So I don't think he was in the public consciousness that way. And you didn't hear a lot of Tom Petty on the radio. I mean, of course, this was on MTV, so that's where you heard it. But I don't remember this song being on the radio a ton. Maybe it's just a bit too American for English ears. Because if 89, that's really kind of, you're in Stone Roses. It's just before grunge. It's that sort of British indie thing. This song's a long way away from that, right? So but I have no answer other than the fact that British people clearly have no musical taste. That's the only thing, the only defense I can offer.
It's his most streamed song, 614 million. I always like to look at this. Nearly doubled up the next highest song. Incredible. The whole song is perfect. I think my favorite parts, obviously, the opening, riff or chord progression is fantastic. But I really like the part where he's like, "I'm going to glide down over Mulholland," and there's like military drums, going there. That's great at the 232 mark, and then there's a guitar breakdown at 319 that I believe Mike plays, which is excellent as well. I mean, those are the highlights of just a fantastic 10 out of 10 song.
And we're going to talk about this lots on this album, right? The production on this, the way that Jeff Lynne's come in after Let Me Up, I've Had Enough, and sort of refocus Tom in terms of writing songs, because Jeff Lynne famously doesn't really, when he's recording an album, doesn't really care about the band. Says his focus is the song needs to be as perfect as we can make it, and which is why even a song that sounds as simple as Free Fallin', there's 3 guitar parts in it, and there's little changes that you don't necessarily quote unquote need in there, but they give the song such a richness. Like you said, that little snare thing in the middle, I don't know that anyone else would have put that in other than Jeff Lynne suggesting it and Phil Jones playing it. And the little, the guitar solo is not a guitar solo; it's just a repetition of that intro progression. So again, it's so simple, but it's so densely sort of layered that you don't notice it. It's so clever.
Yeah, when you're sitting there listening intently to the guitars, or like as you do for your podcast, you really notice a lot of extra stuff that you don't really listen to if you're just kind of listening to it casually, or the way I was listening to it at age 16 when it came out.
So you'd said like it is one of, if not your favorite Petty song. I would say that I bet that's not necessarily the case for the hardcore fans, because the songs that you hear a lot, you tend not to listen to as much. If it's on your mixtape, whatever. But I think this is one of those that whenever Free Fallin' comes on, it would never enter my mind to go, I don't want to listen to this right now. Like if it comes on TV or if I'm in a dentist office or something, it's always a welcome sound coming over the airwaves, because it's just perfect. Like I said, it's a perfect pop song.
It brings up great feelings, great memories, and if it comes on the radio, you're just fortunate that you get to listen to perfection for a few minutes. It's amazing.
And all the vampires walking down Mulholland. I mean, what does that even mean? It's it's people who are zombies in the night, and they're kind of they're night owls and all this. So all the imagery of it too is, and again, so Californian, right? I mean, you live there. It and I've been there once, but it just encapsulates that whole vibe of summer, especially in LA and in California, I think, right?
Yeah, and I think we probably should talk a minute about the video. It just occurred to me how ubiquitous it was, like just to have this on MTV. Tom, was kind of a older rock artist at that point on MTV, and this video is just all like shot in a mall and over yards in California, and then they have this really gorgeous girl who's like a skateboarder and doing the jumps or whatever in the half pipe. And it was one of these songs, watching it and seeing the palm trees and stuff is one of those things that got me interested in moving to California, or at least visiting. because it does look so great. And I think that maybe is one reason why it was such a huge hit in the United States, is that there is a subsection of the country which is just fascinated with California, wants to move to California, and sometimes can, sometimes can't. But
yeah,
you know, California really is kind of this quote unquote paradise, and for a lot of people, not everyone, in the United States. And certainly from a weather standpoint, palm trees, pretty women type stuff. For a 16-year-old kid like myself, it would turning into someplace that I definitely wanted to visit or maybe move to.
Do you think some of that comes from, like, culturally in the US? Is some of that come from, the Depression era, when people did move? They did try to move west, and they did try to get out of the Dust Bowl and move out west. Do you think sort of that mystique or mythologized kind of part of it comes a little bit from that? It's just a hangover from that, maybe?
Well, it's "Go West, young man" is a saying. Was a saying here. It was for a long time the place where you could go make a new life for yourself. And the East was, and the Midwest were, not full, but there are a lot more people there. And just making the trek west was a big thing to do. But there was so much. It was the gold rush of California and all that. But then I think later on, it's really about the weather, Southern California, maybe the glitz and the glamour. It's just one of these states, and I think that's what Tom really fell in love with the state, and that's why he moved out here and lived here. But I think this is like the first maybe overt love letter to the state of California for Tom, and certainly set me on my way to wishing I was out here.
So you get Free Falling. You can't follow it Free Falling. How do you follow it Free Falling? Oh, this little tune I've written called "I Won't Back Down." I mean, holy shit.
Yeah, best first 2 tracks on a album ever. I don't know. I would certainly argue it. Peaked at number 12 in the Hot 100. It was the second highest charting single, number 1 on the rock chart, second most streams, 331 million. The video, which I don't even know if I noticed it, who was in the video when it was on, but it's Tom and Mike, Jeff, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr just casually playing the drums. The great backing vocals. You could hear the Wilburys coming together. The backing vocals are amazing on this, and it's just such a anthem, which Tom sort of struggled with. He didn't know if he wanted to be so overt with the lyrics, but it really speaks to a lot of people, and it fit his personality too. I mean, with all his record company battles and everything, it's just incredible that he was able to write back-to-back mega anthems to start this album.
I love, though, too, that in the video, Ringo clearly has not learned the drum part. What I love is they leave in a few places where he's filling where there is no fill. Like, it's just, so. Have you ever seen, it's a good time to bring up Ringo because we're talking about Jeff Lynne too, and apologies here, there's a curse word here, but it is in context, folks. There's a video where Ringo's talking about Jeff Lynne, because Ringo worked with Jeff Lynne as well, obviously, on different things. He said, Jeff Lynne, he always wants to use the click. Always use the click. He always wants to use the click. I am the fucking click, he says. And when you've got Ringo's meter, fair enough. I wanted to ask you about this one. Do you like the Johnny Cash version? What are your thoughts on that?
I do. I mean, it's very, very different. There's not a lot that Johnny Cash put out that I didn't like. He was my dad's favorite artist. So all the connections here between Tom Petty and Johnny Cash are very welcome in my heart, but very different. I think for him, it's more of Johnny Cash had a very similar attitude in terms of just not taking any, stuff from anyone. Trying to keep it clean here. And I think he and Tom sort of, bonded over that a little bit, but I'm glad he covered it. And I think it's a good version. What do you think?
I don't know. There's something about, and I found Johnny Cash through my granddad. The obvious Ring of Fire and Jackson and some of those tracks, but I got into him when I moved here because country really wasn't a thing in the UK, and I love Johnny Cash. And like I said, for all the same reasons, I like his music, but I also like his, the things that he stood for and his sort of positions on music. But there's just something about, I don't know, it doesn't quite land with me, this one. I don't know what it is about that. And that's the same with a lot of those American recordings, though, too, where I totally get what they were doing. They're immaculately produced. I think they picked the right songs. But I just like hearing Johnny Cash sing Johnny Cash songs. I don't know. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I think and this is one where Tom's on backing vocals, right?
Yeah.
That's interesting to hear.
Yeah.
him singing backing vocals and Johnny Cash on lead.
Well, the Heartbreakers, the house band on those records, right?
Yeah.
So they're covering their own song. You've got the entire band that did the song originally as the backing band on the cover, which again, there's lots of like little first or unique things in the Heartbreakers history, and that might be another one. I can't think of anyone offhand who has covered their own song with someone else on lead vocal.
That just shows you what type of band they were. I mean, they did the whole backing tour with Dylan. Just a really good band. Humble
and able to put their egos aside. And the other thing about this song, obviously, it's been picked up by the Florida Gators as I think it's the end of the third
quarter, between the third and fourth quarter. They play it, and the entire stadium apparently sings it.
Yeah,
saw some video of it.
88,000 people. I mean, that's first of all, let's just not talk about how nuts it is that you've got college football's 88,000 seat stadium for the States. That's insane to me for high school or college football. It's mental. But what I love about that is, and it's the same thing when you're in a crowd watching a gig, and you've seen this song, like you said, I'm sure dozens of times. But that I Won't Back Down, when it's 88,000 people singing it, it implicitly becomes We Won't Back Down. It's that sort of unifying statement of screw you, we're not putting up with this, we're going to fight, right? So it's a perfect fight anthem.
Yeah, it's really that line, hey baby, there ain't no easy way out, that really gets everybody singing at the same time, because it's like that hey baby is such a peak Tom Petty lyric vocal as well, so that gets everybody going, and
it's high enough to be really cool, but it's not quite too far that everyone can't sing it, so it's perfect.
Right. So if you could all scream it sounds all right.
And I'd written too when I did the episode for this, when I said that the only other song that I can think of at this level in sort of terms of anthemic and stadium and this unifying thing is We Are the Champions by Queen. It's the same thing where everyone just instinctively pulls together and everyone's going to sing this and everyone knows it. It's one of those. I think it's one of the few. But I would say probably more people know this one than Free Falling even at this point. Now we're so far removed from it because this is more anthemic in that way, and it's sort of got more of a use beyond just being a song. It's sort of it's a rallying cry for so many people. And of course, we're not going to talk about the most recent version that was released because I'm not giving any airtime to that meathead. So, but it's got that transformative effect that it transcends just the song itself, I think.
Yeah, I think everybody heard it except for Sam Smith, right? Wasn't this the track that he got sued over, and he claimed he never heard the song, but you can totally hear the melody. And okay, we'll see.
I mean, I'm calling BS on that one. I mean, you'd have to actively try and avoid all popular music to have not heard this song somewhere at some point, right?
I would think so, although I don't know how well it did in the UK, so maybe it wasn't played on the airwaves over there.
I don't buy it. He's a professional musician. He's heard that song. But anyway, so track 3, we move into Love Is a Long Road.
Yeah, this one, I love this. I love this song. Yeah, I listened to your podcast about it, and to me, it's just coming back to it, I thought this was a much bigger hit for him. I think it was played on the radio a lot where I was at. It did. Yeah. Peaked at number 7 on the mainstream rock chart. I don't know if it was released as a proper single because it shows up in a different part, other charted songs on his wiki page. So it's not like part of the table.
No.
But it got played a lot in and around Milwaukee, where I grew up. Only 24 of his songs charted higher, so this is a fairly big hit for him. It's his 27th most streamed song, but I think 11 million streams is pretty criminal for it. Yeah. I just like the intro a lot with the keys, which is unusual, certainly unusual for Heartbreakers. It wasn't a Heartbreakers album, but
yeah,
it was a departure from that sound. And then the guitar comes crashing in, and they were smart enough to say, okay, we're going to do that later again in the song after this epic guitar solo at the 157 mark. And then it leads into a repeat of that Keys guitar intro again, just giving you that opener again. I love this track. I think it's a phenomenal song. 9 out of 10 for me.
When that reprise, however you pronounce that, it's a trope, right? Like it's a rock and roll trope. It's something you can do to sort of throw back. And that's one of the things about this song that I'd noted is there's quite a few rock tropes in this song, but they're not overdone, and they're so delicately balanced that they don't date it. It doesn't really, I mean, it feels like, okay, late 80s song, but the song quality is so high that, like I said, I think it's probably most of this album too. It stands up. And I'd written down too, like I'd literally written in the episode that I can't help wondering how this one would have done if they'd released it as a single. Because it did receive a significant amount of airplay, but maybe that's one of those things where it's, well, we can't release 6 songs off an album. It's like, you can. Maybe you don't want to, but you could have done.
Yeah, I mean, and we'll talk about the next track, which to me is not as strong of a song, but I think Love Is a Long Road is one of his best. And for me, first 3 tracks of this, no errors at all with these 3. I mean, you start with Free Fallin', which is kind of an acoustic anthem ballad.
Yeah.
I Won't Back Down, again, maybe like a mid-tempo, but just a total anthem. And then you come in with a real hard rocker like Love Is a Long Road, which got, you mentioned the production of it. It stands up. It does sound a little 80s, but it doesn't sound so 80s like a lot of other music that came out, mid to late 80s.
Well, if you think about You Got Lucky, right? That's the difference between You Got Lucky and this is just that selection of tone on the synth. And of course, there's technology and there's different sounds available, but it's just used a little bit better and it doesn't date it quite so much. Or Runaway Trains, right? It doesn't sound 80s in the same way that those two do. And it was played a lot live. Like it was played, 174 times live, but it wasn't sort of, only on the subsequent tour and then dropped after that. It was played 91, 95, well, 90 through 95, 97 again, 2002, 2003, 2013. So it's a song that clearly Tom and the boys liked and had no problem going back to.
Yeah, I heard it a few times live, and it just kind of brings up something that I thought of is how the Heartbreakers at the start of this didn't like that Tom was making. This is his first solo record.
Yeah.
They didn't understand or, want him to be off making an album. They thought that they were making a Heartbreakers album, and they just kind of felt a little slighted by it. And they didn't like the music at the start. You could see it in the documentary when they're talking about it. But then it became such a huge part of Tom's legacy and the set list and all the concerts that they're all playing on it live and looking happy enough. With Love Is a Long Road, I think I don't know if it suffered from being on this album relative, because if you're putting together a set list, you're not going to put like 7 songs from one album most of the time on the set list, especially 15, 20 years later. This one, You're So Bad, didn't always get played, and maybe they would have gotten played more frequently if they had not been, sharing time with I Won't Back Down and Free Fall and Running Down a Dream.
Yeah, and we didn't talk too much about that, right? We didn't talk at the top about the band. I mean, I think Benmont in particular and Howie, well, and Stan, they were kind of opposed to this, and I can see that, right? Because I think they had started sessions, right? They'd started, thinking about the next album, and I think a couple of songs maybe came out of, or a couple of ideas came out, and I think that's where Waiting for Tonight comes from more so than, or I think that's where its origins were, I believe. It's a bit difficult to track that information down. But yeah, I mean, Jeff Lynne's come in and he doesn't do things the way that anyone else does. And Tom's got a new friend. It's like when Dave Stewart came in, I'm sure it was the same sort of, well, why are you writing with him? Why are you not writing with us? But I think, like we said, we talked about this on the last album wrap, coming off Let Me Up, I've Had Enough, which came off the back of Southern Accents, and everything just getting a bit frustrating and the process just wasn't good. And that clean break, a way for Tom just to work with someone else and get a new perspective on how to tackle a song and how to approach things, it definitely set him up for the rest for him and the Heartbreakers career moving forward. So I think, the good that came out of it was certainly way, way, way more than the bad.
Yeah, I think there's certainly reason to be threatened, and they're sitting doing their whatever side projects expecting to make a Heartbreakers record, and he's off with the Wilburys, he's off with Roy Orbison on his solo record, and now making his own solo record with Jeff Lynne. It all paid off, I think, for the band. Like, they all benefited from the success of this album, but I don't think at that time they were into it.
Yeah.
And I think it was, a lot of it was the sound of it that didn't appeal to them, because, Tom saying that these don't sound like Heartbreakers songs.
Yeah.
And certainly you can make the case for that for a lot of them. So maybe they're not, they're just like, yeah, why are we not involved in this? Maybe just felt a little bit slighted, but he was, feeling the creative juices flowing. And I also think this is probably when, in the middle of Stan Lynch's slow departure from the band, it just 100%. Seemed like Tom and him were not getting along that great, and it was easy for him just to have Mike there and then with Jeff and then have a session drummer and just kind of go from there, as opposed to bringing in everybody but Stan, because that'd be, which happened later kind of. But
he's the only Heartbreaker who doesn't appear on the record, right? So
I think so that's, I think, is kind of where that was starting, and that, a little bit of fracture there within the original Heartbreakers.
But there's two things there too, right? Because I mean, like I said, Howie outright said, "I don't want to play on this." Tom had played him. I can't remember which song it was, but he said, "I don't want to play on this," and crazy. But one thing, I wonder if that did create any tension between Mike and the rest of the band, because of course Mike's going to be involved, and they end up recording it at Mike's house, in his garage, the most of the thing. And Mike Campbell engineered this thing, which again Jeff Lynne loved, because he said he gave me exactly what I needed. He didn't give me too much. He gave me exactly what I wanted, exactly what I needed. And, the control room was up in a spare bedroom, and all the instruments are out in the garage. And there's that great photo from the original sort of idea for the cover. But so I wonder if, Mike's involved, and Mike's actually sort of co-written a couple of songs on this record. What's going on? I wonder if that caused any tension. But then the other thing I was thinking too about is, you think about this period generally, it's not just Full Moon Fever, it's Into the Great Wide Open too, because that sounds more like Full Moon Fever than it does like the Heartbreakers as well. And that's where, and you've got the Wilburys, and like you said, you've got your Roy Orbison, and you've got Handled with Care and everything else, and George. So it doesn't sound like the Heartbreakers. So you can see why Stan, I think, felt, well, I want to play rock and roll drums, and this is starting to stray into this weird pop stuff. Now, if he'd only stuck around a little bit longer, they end up getting back there. But I can totally see why it's a conflict with his style and his persona.
Yeah. And as I mentioned, it did work out for everybody, for most everybody, for the remainder. But I think at that point, they were all just they were very honest in the documentary about just how they felt at the time. But obviously it was a huge monster hit and helped all their careers in terms of touring.
Absolutely. And so we come off Love Is a Long Road, which we just talked about. And you said that one of your favorite songs, and again, I love the song. I went the opposite way. So I kind of said, I think A Face in the Crowd is the one off this album where I think it's a bit of a forgotten song. It's almost like a deep cut, even though it was released as a single, because you never hear this on the radio. If they're going to play something off Full Moon Fever, it's going to be one of the big three, right? It's not going to be this one. And I like that it's this break in tone, in tempo. We get the minor key thing. It's quite sad, mournful. But again, it's such a masterclass in how you arrange a song. There's no fat on it. I can't remember how long. It's one of the longer songs on the album, I think. Comes in at 3:58, yeah, so it's almost 4 minutes. But it doesn't drag. You don't feel like you're like, oh, come on, let's go somewhere else. It's just beautifully paced. And I think the video is great too, because Tom looks cool in that video, man. It just looks like the Californian surfer cool dude, I think.
Yeah, I like this song more now. I appreciate it more now than I did when I was 16.
Yeah.
Listening to this album over and over again. I thought it was fine. I think I would have put something else here to keep the momentum going in that side A. I would have had this as a side B track. I think it'd been a really good one. There, peaked at 46 on the Hot 100, number 5 on the rock chart. It was the 17th biggest hit by chart performance for Tom. So it was a fairly big hit for him. I think there are if you listen closely, there are some Wildflowers signals here in terms 100%. Of maybe the sadness or just kind of melancholy side of it. The lyrics are a little melancholy. Obviously the tempo is a little slower than the usual stuff. The guitar after he sings out in the street and the lyrics is just terrific. I just think that I would have put this on the second side, and they did play it, which was an interesting choice. I believe they played it. They had on David Letterman when this album was coming out, and they chose to play this instead of Free Fallin' or I Won't Back Down or Running Down a Dream, and just kind of melt the faces of the. So I think they did really like the song at the time and still do. But given those other choices, it was a little odd that they decided to go with Face in the Crowd as here we're gonna promote our album with this track.
Well, I suspect that. I don't know what I'd have to look at the dates and the sort of the sequencing of that, but I'd be willing to bet that, because this was the third or fourth single, right? So I'm guessing that I Won't Back Down, Running Down a Dream, Free Falling have all been out and received fairly significant airplay before they went on Letterman. So I'm guessing that it's okay. We've got this new single. Let's play this one to show that we've got this different angle. That would be my guess.
Yeah, February 1990. It was the 4th. So it'll be interesting to see the date on that appearance.
We shall do some investigating and report back.
Yes,
folks.
we will.
But I do like to. There's a little story in Conversation with Tom Petty where he talks about a Mexican flight attendant who kind of excitedly came over to him on a plane and said he's using almost all his English. Said, "Oh yes, Tom Petty, a face in the crowd, a face in the crowd." So there you go. I mean, it lands with the Mexicans. It's big in the Mexican market.
Apparently, you never know. I like it, and I like it more now than I did.
Yeah.
Then I just think it's a little bit of and maybe you sometimes need this kind of downshifting in the middle of that first side. I'll tell you what I would have put there later on in our producer of the day.
Okay, so we're going to close out side one with another absolute behemoth of a track, Running Down a Dream. And this one for me it's about that descending guitar riff, and it's about that solo at the end. And we're going to talk about that solo at the end because one of the all-time great. I mean, put it up there with Stay Away and, Bo Rap and all those. It's up there for me, just in its genius and its simplicity and its brilliance. Thoughts on Running Down a Dream, John?
Yeah, what a guitar riff. Mike Campbell, fantastic live. This is the song that got us down in the front row of the 40th anniversary tour. My son, who was 9 at the time, was dancing in the aisle, and everybody around us thought he was the coolest person in the audience. And the security called us down and put us in the front row for the encore, which was really cool. And then he got a copy of the set list after the show, and he was a guitarist at the time and loved playing this little he loves playing that. Can play a lot better now that he's 15. But what a memorable guitar on this, and it peaked at 23 on the Hot 100, number 1 on the rock chart. Of his 10 number 1 songs on the rock chart, 3 came off of Full Moon Fever, which I thought was really interesting.
And I think it was the first 3 singles all hit number 1, and then I think the other 2 hit number 5 on the rock chart, right? I think.
Yeah, I mean, as this is happening, you wonder now what the rest of the Heartbreakers thought about think about the music and think about it's popular. It's the 3rd most streamed song, 226 million. Although the listeners tend to favor the Best of Everything version, since it doesn't have that little snippet. Hello, CD listeners.
Oh yeah, that's got to be in there. Come on.
People, I guess, like to put this on their playlist and not have that snippet there. I like hearing him say that. Brings back a lot of memories. It's such a great track. Ultimate driving song. Descending guitar riff, as we mentioned. Underrated acoustic guitars during the chorus, which I think was probably a Jeff Lynne edition. A lot of rock didn't have that going on. And then this mega Mike Campbell solo at the end, doesn't get any better than that.
And the opening riff too, I love that was because everyone sort of said this is a very Mike Campbell-y song, but Tom said in Conversation with Tom Petty that that's really what Mike had. He just had that little descending riff, and honestly, pretty much anyone can play that on guitar because it's an open E, so you're really just on the second string playing or on the top string playing 3 notes and then pulling off. Very, very simple. But Tom says that Mike had written that in a completely different time signature. It was sort of a syncopated, slower time signature. But Tom loved it. He said, so I was just sitting around playing with it and trying it in different ways. And then he played it one night for Jeff Lynne, and Jeff Lynne said, oh, that's good. That might be one of those last riffs left. So again, it's that thing of you just need someone else's ear sometimes to say you should definitely do something with that, right?
Yeah, and Tom and Mike, another example of how well they work together. And for Mike, it's lack of ego.
Yeah,
I think for Tom as well, but for Mike especially, such a great guitarist, does not have the ego that we know of, certainly. Just seems humble, and loved working with Tom, and they worked so well together, I think partly for that reason.
I just want to find, because what I love about that, we'll talk about the solo right away, because again, what I love when Tom's telling Paul Zollo about it, he says that, Mike's sitting there, he's barely moving. It's like a statue, and he's playing this solo, and it's one take, and it's the first take. And he says, Jeff Lynne kind of looks back over his shoulder at him like, is this really happening? Is this guy playing this right now? So he just couldn't believe I could. And wouldn't you love to hear because it fades out. Wouldn't you love to hear the rest of it? Just to see how much he played? Because maybe he dropped a clam right where they faded it out to say, oh, and he just ballsed it up. But they sort of think, oh, well, we'll just fade it out there and that'll be great. So
amazing. Like this Mike Campbell at his very best. That's one of the reasons why he's my favorite rock guitarist out there. And I think he's so underrated.
I had an interesting conversation with Janet Lovell, who I spoke to in season 4 or 5, whatever. And she said she doesn't like that word. And I knew what she was saying, but Mike Campbell certainly isn't underrated amongst guitarists. If you ask guitarists whether Mike Campbell's a good guitarist, they'll all, of course he is, one of the best, and has played with everyone. But in the mainstream, like, you never see him on lists of, Rolling Stone or Billboard, which is frustrating because he wasn't Steve Vai, he wasn't doing this all the time, right? But listen to this solo. Listen to how this solo's composed. It's got everything in it. It's got string bends. It's got hammer-ons and pull-offs. It's got triplets. It's got everything that a really good guitarist plays, and it's also immaculately timed, and the meter's perfect. It's like that's a one-off. So to sit and just imagine just the three of them too, sitting in Mike Campbell's garage, and maybe Bugs was around because he did some assistant engineering, but I would have loved to be a fly on the wall in that session. Would have been amazing. Because I can imagine too Mike going, "What do you think?" Like, what do we think? That's the solo. That's the end of the song. Because wasn't the other thing that the song wasn't meant to be this long. Because again, this is the longest track off Full Moon Fever, and it clocks in at 4:23, where most of the songs of this album are really lean. But how do you cut this off earlier? You've got to let that whole thing go, right?
Yeah, I mean, or lightning in a bottle. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. I'm mixing my metaphors, but you have something that's great. You just put it on the album. Yeah. It's not that hard.
Okay, and so the interstitial that ends the "Hello CD listeners," and of course Del Shannon is referenced, name checked in the song, and it's Del Shannon apparently who does all the barnyard noises, which is weird, in that little section. Which again, so me and my daughter go play pool every week, once a week on Fridays usually, and we usually take over the jukebox because the music in the pool hall is terrible. So we load up the jukebox with either Tom Petty or Aerosmith or Queen or the Beatles or whatever. So when we put this on, I always love it because the song fades out. And then there's that little sort of 3-4 second gap. And then this comes in. And you can see people in the pool hall going, like, looking at what the hell is this? And it always makes me laugh. I love it.
Yeah, I think this was the first, you look at these first few songs. And if I was really getting into Tom Petty at this time, which I was, how much exposure do I have to his sense of humor at this point? I think this was it. Like, he is a very witty, has a dry, quirky sense of humor, and this was a great evidence of it. I was like, oh, I like this guy. He's got a little comedy to him, to his game.
Well, it's that thing that I love. It's a thing I think everyone should live by: is take what you do seriously, never take yourself seriously. And Tom had that in abundance.
And I don't know what prompted it too. Like, he's probably sitting there. Well, we have the CD, we have album sides, and he's like, well, let's just put something at the end here for the CD people. And in fairness to those listening to record org, to stand up or sit down and turn over the record org tape.
I mean, this whole period in his life though was so loose, right? Because even the way they recorded all the songs, we haven't talked about that. All the songs in this album were, for the most part, let's write them and try and record them in as close to a day as we can. Let's not overthink it. Let's get in there, and it shows. And obviously, there's, like I said, there's lots of overdubs and there's bits of production that go on afterwards. But the main bones of a lot of these songs were just let's get them done as quickly as we can, but not in the same way that Let Me Up was. So the looseness and the sort of the joy of doing it and the fun definitely comes through. So
it's funny that we did an intermission. This was first intermission, and it happened between side A and side B.
Perfect. We'll kick off side B. Feel a Whole Lot Better. And it's not I'll Feel a Whole Lot Better, which is the original title of the Byrds version, but Feel a Whole Lot Better. What are your thoughts on this one?
It probably changed over the years. When I first heard it, I didn't realize that it was a cover. I wasn't familiar with the Byrds at that point. And I did end up, once I realized this, I was like, oh, they got a good sound. And I went out and bought the Byrds Greatest Hits. I had that for a long time. It's a faithful cover, I would say. And you can see how Byrds in general and this Byrds track sort of puts its stamp on the entire album. I think this was maybe an inspiration for the sound of the album that, Tom wanted to write at this point and put out.
Yeah.
Because definitely that California type sound, acoustic sound. And, you know, I like the track a lot as I was listening to it. I don't, you know, as I said, I don't think I was aware that it was a cover, and it's not one where you see some of these B-sides and you're like, okay, well, maybe some of these other tracks should have been on it. And this would be one of the first ones to go if we had to cut it. And I think it is a pretty good opener for the second side, though. It's got a, you know, a good rhythm to it, and get into side 2. And there's 7 songs on side 2, which I think is kind of incredible.
A lot of content. I mean, it's such a faithful cover, though. That's where my hesitation about it goes, because usually if someone's going to cover a song, and Petty did this with Asshole, and he did it with Change the Locks, he put his own spin on it, and it became a Tom Petty song. With this one, it sounds like Tom Petty and Jeff Lynne performing a Birds song. Very, very, very faithful. I mean, note for note almost, right? Apart from there's a little bit of percussion in there that I noticed that isn't on the original, which I just don't know if I need that from Tom Petty. Right? Like, I'd rather have more Tom Petty songs always. I'd rather have always originals than covers on an album. And of course, the Heartbreakers, we've talked about lots, of one of the best cover bands of all time, if not the best. And they did it live quite a few times. But on the album, you know, but then again, I did rate it as a 7, because how do you fault this song? It's a bloody brilliant cover. The playing on it's superb. The production on it's great. Tom sounds good singing it. The harmonies are great. But I just, if I'm going to pick, like you said, if I'm going to drop a song from this album, this might be one of the ones that I drop.
And it makes you wonder if this was one of the tracks that sort of came out of the notion that they needed to fill out the album, and that, you know, they only had 7 or 8 songs and needed to get some more, you know, just to sort of have a full LP. Because it does sort of feel like maybe, oh, okay, we'll do a Birds cover, and, you know, this one sounds good, and we'll just put it on there, because it does fit acoustically and just sonically with the rest of the album in terms of the sound. I mean, you could totally see how it might be, you know, part of the inspiration for the album.
Well, I think that's what Tom said, right? They had 9, or like you said, 8 or 9 songs, and the record company said, no, you need more. And I would be willing to bet a whole month's wages that had the record company not come back and said that, or if they had finished some of the other songs, that this probably wouldn't have even been considered. But I think the other thing maybe is that because the Full Moon Fever sessions were interrupted by the Wilburys sessions, while you've got Jeff and they're doing a lot of those 5-part harmonies and vocals and things. So I think that maybe this is a song that, you know, the Wilburys were just jamming around, and Tom and Jeff thought, well, there we go. That one's pretty much built to go. We know we can do it, and we can probably do it really quickly. So let's just do it, and we'll put it on. Maybe we'll leave it there, and if we don't come up with anything else, then we've got a safety in the bank, right? And it ends up on the album. But like you said, it is a good side 2 opener.
Yeah, solid track. Fits. The next track, You're So Bad, if you don't mind moving on, did not chart in the top 100 Hot 100. Number 5 on the rock chart. To me, this is pretty clearly the 4th or 5th best song on the album. Okay. So I would move this to side A in place of Facing the Crowd, and I think it would have done better as a single if it would have been released a little bit earlier in the single cycle. It was after Facing the Crowd as the 5th single, last single off the album. So such great lyrics. Here's more sense of, big sense of humor. Yeah. Tom's sense of humor, coming out in a big way is what I mean to say. And I just love the catchy, but not me, baby. I've got you to save me, right into the chorus of You're So Bad, best thing I ever had in a world, God, man, you're so bad. And the just spelling your Y-E-R.
Yeah.
And the drums coming up and the little breakdown towards the end as the chorus repeats. And I think and maybe you can defend yourself here. You brought up the feel a whole lot better score, which was a 7 out of 10.
Okay.
Which is fine. No problem with that score. But how do you give this an 8? It's only 1 point better than Feel a Whole Lot Better. No, this to me is a 9, easy 9. Yeah. Easiest 9 I could possibly give.
You know what? I don't really have a defense for that, John. I can't tell you why I only gave it an 8. I'm not sure. I got nothing. I don't know. I'd have to go back and read what I wrote and try and make some sort of sense of, because if I'm only 1 point better. No, it's not. It's a much, much better song. Yeah, no. You got me bang twice. We'll add it to the redemption episode that we're going to record. So
yeah, I love to nitpick your scores. I just do it once or twice an album wrap episode. But that was one I was like, oh, you gave us an 8. Like, this is easy 9.
Yeah, I don't
easy
know
peasy.
Well, it's got that turn of phrase that Tom Petty had that very few other people, like, Dylan definitely has it, but there's very few other people who would have come up with my sister's ex-husband can't get no loving, walks around dog-faced and hurt. What the hell? I've never heard that expression before. I'm sure people use it somewhere, but it's brilliant.
It's probably a Southern term. I hadn't heard it, but once you hear it, you're like, oh, I know what he means by that.
Yeah.
But
totally. Yeah.
This is a really, when you think about it, a very interesting love song in terms of how he's telling you, in the chorus, he's talking about how he's got this, the subject of this song, even calling her bad in a world God man, you're so bad. But he's saying that she's great.
Yeah.
But just contrasting it with these horrible relationships in the, in the verses. I'm not sure I'd heard that before, like telling a story about failed marriage, another, the ex-husband can't get no loving, and then going into, but not me, I've got you. I just think it's really clever, this song. That's why I think it's kind of a sleeper as well, because of, it didn't chart that high. It was played some on the radio. He played it on the 40th anniversary tour, which was great to see that, because one of my favorites. But I think he liked this track a lot. It was the second one, I believe, or one of the first two songs that were written for this album, along with Free Fallin', I believe.
I think it's the first one, because I think it was this one when they were all just hanging out, George and Jeff and a bunch of other people and Tom, and he played this for Jeff Lynne and said, hey, do you want to produce this? I think it was just like kind of an off the cuff kind of thing, and Jeff said, sure, where are we going to do it? Well, let's do it at Mike's house, and that sort of that natural evolution. So I think it was the first song. And again, I mean, it's such a black comedy song. Like, it's a really, like, those two verses are really mean. Like, you've got, he's really ragging on his sister. Like, she doesn't come out of this looking very good. And then her ex-husband at the end is going to end up committing suicide. Like, but in this really bouncy, jangly kind of song, like, then interspersed with those choruses. So yeah, brilliant bit of lyric writing.
Yeah, 29 million streams, more than about 11 million more than A Face in the Crowd. It's definitely a fan favorite. When this gets played, I think the crowd really gets pumped up.
I think it is one, and again, was a single, but it's a deep cut that people. Can you imagine a Tom Petty, like a hardcore Tom Petty fan who doesn't like this song? I would be amazed.
Unless they were, maybe the subject, or married a yuppie, and now there's a swinger dating a singer. Maybe they felt attacked. That's the only way I could see it.
Okay, well, we move on to Depending on You. I was amazed when I did the episode that I couldn't believe they never played this live. It's one of two songs on the album they'd never played live. The other one, I can see why they didn't play live. This one, that really surprised me. Not even once on on sort of a later tour or something. But this one's got a very, very, very handled with care vibe to it. Obviously, the intro riff it's not the same, but it's very, very close, and it feels like a Wilbury song to me.
I think we're in the midst here, like, track 7, which is You're So Bad, through 11. This is a really strong set of tracks that were not really released as singles really that much, or played that much live, except for You're So Bad, I guess. This is what makes, I think, this album so great, is that it's really strong on the second side as well. Depending on You is a sleeper. It was Tom talked about it in the Zollo book, and he's like, in the immediate response to this, bringing up Depending on You, he's just talking about how great sounding it was, and how great sounding, magical was the word he used, the sound was on the album. He's like, he just didn't feel like he could necessarily he was fortunate to be a part of this and having it happen all at that time. He wasn't always sure that he was going to be able to recapture the sound of the album, and that was kind of just all these acoustic guitars and amazing backing vocals and great production that it just makes it's a good one. It's a catchy song. Sing along with it. I don't know. What'd you give this one?
I gave this one a 7, only because it's just a really, really good album track, but it doesn't have that X factor that, let's say, Running Down a Dream or Free Fallin' has, right? But that you give up so easily. That chorus line with the harmony is just so beautiful, as that bridge into the chorus. And one thing one of my guests, Ivan Anderson, who's a musician out of New York, had said about Listen to a Heart, he called it a little song. And he wasn't being dismissive. What he meant was, it's not a grand idea, and it's just a really, like, a small, compact, tight song. And I put this one in that same bracket. Like it's really, really get in, get out. It's kind of like the Beatles and the Birds and the Beach Boys. It's a really nice, tight, lean pop song. And I love it. I love this song. Because for me, it was one that I kind of rediscovered a little bit because I don't listen to this one a lot, or I didn't before I did the episode for it. And now it's on my playlist again because it's just so much fun.
Yeah, one of these side B gems that we sort of rediscover as we do these podcasts, right? I mean, these are the types of tracks that make albums 10 out of 10.
Yeah,
like,
100%.
You have to be really solid, really good album tracks. I probably would go with an 8 out of 10 for it. If the Bird song Feel a Whole Lot Better is a 7 and You're So Bad's a 9. But this, I'm not the one scoring this stuff. I just nitpick your scoring. But this is a great Tom Petty song, just not a huge popular favorite with the on the radio or with fans necessarily.
Okay, we'll talk about popular with the fans. Again, you said another album track coming up next, which was written before the album and it was sort of repurposed. So the Apartment song, I did give this one a 9 because for me, again, this is just, if I'm going to pick a deep cut of Tom Petty's to give to someone, and I did this with the Petty 8, this is the song from this album that I gave to someone who's never heard Tom Petty and I'm trying to stay away from the hits. I gave him this one to show a different side. It's a country / rock and roll song that doesn't sound, again, like really anything else they did.
Was this from which sessions? Was it the Southern Accents?
Yeah.
So how does it not make Southern Accents? I think Trailer didn't make Southern Accents.
I
guess they went from a concept album to whatever the hodgepodge album that was.
One word, John, one word, cocaine. That's a lot to answer for.
I love the demo with Stevie because their voices sound so great together, but he did say that he always envisioned this as a solo track, like a one person singing. So I guess I understand that thing. I love the tempo change, another great chorus. Oh yeah, I'm all right. I just feel a little lonely tonight. I'm okay most of the time. I just feel a little lonely tonight. I mean, if you're not singing along with that when this is playing, it might be something wrong with you. This is a great one. Another great side B. Like, this is a great sequence here as well. Like they put this together really nicely, and it's really 7 through 11, man, really strong tracks.
I love to, like you said, the lyric though. I'm okay most of the time. I just feel a little. It's that sort of things could be worse. Things could be better, definitely, but they could be worse. I'm all right. I'm okay. I like that sort of middle ground because songs usually tend to go one way or the other, right? Where I'm very happy or I'm very sad. You don't really hear songs about, I'm okay. I'm all right.
Well, how often do they say okay in a song? Like it's the nuance. Like I love nuance too. So it's not like you mentioned, it's not like, oh, I'm so in love with you, everything's great, or I'm totally torn up and everything's horrible. I'm okay most of the time. I just feel a little lonely tonight.
And I used to live in a 2-room apartment, neighbors knocking on my wall, ta, 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 and you get the drums come in. And again, this song again gets elevated. And I love the original version too. No, we will talk about the original version a little bit, but this version is just made by that Buddy Holly, the Peggy Sue paradiddles, the drum beat in the middle, because you're not expecting it. That comes from nowhere, and it's just like, oh, that's so good. It's such a good lift to go. That was
the tempo change I was referring to. Like it's a great track. I'm a little torn about the Stevie thing because I just love hearing them together. But I think that the way they made this sound like the rest of the album, because it does, the original demo doesn't sound a whole lot like this version, in my opinion. So
and going back, and when you look at this, it's not sort of explicitly stated, but I don't think that there was an original version, because George Draculias, who helped produce Playback, plays drums on the Playback version. Now, he definitely wasn't around during the Southern Accent sessions. Mike Campbell plays bass on it as well. So I'm guessing that it was, okay, we've got the guitars and we've got Tom and Stevie singing it, but we don't have anything else. Let's fill it in and sort of make it sound like it would have sounded had we done it. So that's my guess on that. So
that makes sense, because he did the same thing with You Come Through with Lenny Kravitz, added the parts after the fact in order to release it on Playback. That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, next song is the album closer. Oh, no, sorry. It's not the album closer, is it? But it's All Right for Now, which
should be the album closer. The Good Night would have been great at the end of the album. Like this is Tom and Mike, just Jeff's away. They're finger picking live together, the guitars. It's so good. It might have been a little bit of blessing in disguise that Jeff wasn't around, because he might have added some stuff to this one, but it needs to be just a stripped down ballad.
And it was written for Anakin when she was about 6 or 7, which Dana Petty had posted on Tom Petty Nation last year. And it seems like Tom confirmed that in conversation with Paul Zollo. He says, yeah, says, was it? Mike and I did it. We did it live, just the two of us playing together. And it's that thing of, Just the Two of Us by the Beatles. It's got that same kind of thing where Lennon and McCartney just sat down facing each other playing guitars, and you can imagine them, Tom and Mike doing that the same thing in the garage late one night after everyone's gone to bed and just picking this beautiful, simple little melody. Just a gorgeous song.
I love the lyric about the baby or the child furrowing their brow. Like that's paints a picture of somebody, a kid trying to sleep or a baby trying to sleep, and they got that look on their face, and they're just like, don't furrow your brow.
Yeah. Well, it's that thing, like anyone who is a father, exactly what this song is. You know what I mean? It really, and that's where it really sort of connects and strikes you that all you can see when you look at your kid when they're a baby is your heart outside your chest. And it's that thing of like, one day they're going to go up and leave, but right now, like, yeah, don't cry, don't furrow your brow, like everything's all right for now. But it's that thing too, that switch where everything's all right, but then you get this, a little bit of darkness comes in for now. Like it might not always be okay. Something might happen, but it's all right for now. So let's live with that and live in the moment and be peaceful with it being all right for now. Very, very, again, just a very, very clever lyric. And I sometimes wonder whether we read too much into those things and we sort of attribute some of this depth after the fact. But Tom was so good at it that you think, well, I don't know, he's consistent with that, so I'm pretty sure he meant it. So
yeah, this is another one where they're not so high or so low. Everything's all right for now. It's like this middle of the road type. We're getting through it, and I do know that they closed at least one concert with it, and maybe more. I didn't do a lot of research, but I know there's a live version of it where he's saying, "Thank you so much. I just want to." It's been wonderful playing for you, and at the end of the song or whatever. And it would be, they normally would end on, American Girl or Running Down a Dream or something like that with a high energy and leave everybody just like faces melted. But sometimes they went the other way and, played something like this at the end of their shows.
I think it was the Fillmore, right? Because I think it's on the box set where they finish with All Right for Now, and then they have that little spoken interlude. I'm just going to look on the set list. Yeah, so they do. Okay, so it was the last date of the run when they did 40 songs, and that's the song that they closed it out with. Which, what a great little coda to that run too, right?
And I would say that it's probably easier, or they probably think it's easier to get away with that at the Fillmore after 40 songs because everybody's tired and they're okay getting out of there at that point, as opposed to having to end on a real high note.
Absolutely. So okay, we move into another song that's sort of part of the Tom Petty canon that the hardcore fans love for a very specific sort of line in this song. A Mind with a Heart of Its Own. One of the funnest lyrics he wrote, I think, again, on an album that's got a ton of them.
Yeah, and this is a big tempo change when you listen to this after All Right for Now, which is maybe a little jarring. I wouldn't put this after All Right for Now. I'd put All Right for Now last, but this is another really, really strong side 2 track. I love the repeating, like bluesy, Bo Diddley, but it's acoustic. Guitar on this, really good. It's a sing-along song. It's really catchy. Great backing vocals. And I think my favorite part is the ad-lib line at the end. Apparently, I thought it was so funny at the time, and I'm like, and then you find out he just made this up on the spot. Well, I've been to Brooker, I've been to Micanopy, I've been to St. Louis too. I've been all around the world. I've been over to your house. You've been over sometimes to my house. I've slept in your treehouse. My middle name is Earl. And he's like, oh, it just landed perfectly, and my middle name is Earl. So.
I love it when you read that. It's like it surprised and delighted him that he came up with it. Oh, that's the right name too. So yeah. And I said what I'd commented on the episode that what cracks me up about it is he's kind of bragging, right? I've been to Brooker and I've been to Micanopy and I've been to St. Louis too. I've been all around the world. Look, Brooker and Micanopy are within cycling distance of where you grew up, dude. And they're both like 300 and 600 population towns. Why are you bragging about this? It's so funny,
Hey, but he's been to St. Louis too.
Which is what? That's 200,000? Oh, crack me up. And I mean, my middle name is Earl. It's part of Petty folklore. you know. And I did, so I think on my merch store, I did, there's a t-shirt on there, you know, the My Name is Earl, the TV show. So I've got that logo with the little thing above it, the correction, like the English teacher correction with middle. So my middle name is Earl in there. So that's it, you know. Anybody who's listening, if you want a bit of merch, there you go. That's an option.
Yeah, I would just say that the guitar really gets this off to a good one, like dun 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 dun.
Yeah,
and it carries it throughout.
Yeah, it's the Bo Diddley beat, and there's a reason why the Bo Diddley beat is used all throughout rock and roll, including the drum beat on American Girl. Right? That's exactly what that is. It's a slightly modified, but it's the same beat. So I don't know, revisiting it, and it's a nice little loop back around. But we got one more song to talk about, and it's a song that I would think it's safe to say that not everyone in the Pettyhead sort of world loves, and Tom certainly didn't love it. So Zombie Zoo, where do you land on Zombie Zoo?
I have mixed feelings on it now because I know Tom wasn't crazy about it. So for some reason, it's colored my opinion of it. But I think at the time listening to it, I liked it. I turned on before we recorded. I wanted to listen to the second half of the original sequencing, and it came on. And I was singing along with it. Yeah. And I think it does fit on the album because there is a lot of like references to LA and, you know, the zombies, you know, walking around and all that type of stuff. So I think sonically it does fit, lyrically it does fit. Tom called it nonsense though. He said that Jeff really campaigned for it. It is pretty catchy. And I think it's a testament to, you know, how easy at the time and how much the creative juices were flowing for Tom that he's got this track, which, you know, might have been a middle of the road track on the previous album in terms of song quality, but now is like one of these ones that he kind of wishes he hadn't released.
Yeah.
Did they ever play it live?
No, never played live. And
not surprising.
So I wanted to talk to you about this and see what you think, because I'd written when I did the episode, I'd said that there's something about this one that it's the only one on the album that, if I was going to say the one that doesn't fit for a reason, and a very specific reason, this is it. It's because this sounds a bit more like a Jeff Lynne song than a Tom Petty song to me. It's where that sort of that balance just tips that way, because everything else on the album is tips Tom Petty way, but sounds a bit like Jeff Lynne. Where this one sounds more like, if you listen to ELO at all, this sounds more like something Jeff Lynne would do than Tom Petty would do. So that's my only my main critique of it. And other than that, yeah, it's a fun, bouncy throwaway song that you can hum, but structurally, it's just a bit. I just find this one a wee bit average.
Interestingly, from a streaming standpoint, it has 6.8 million streams, which is more than A Mind with a Heart of Its Own, more than All Right for Now, more than Depending on You, and more than Feel a Whole Lot Better. So from a fan standpoint or from a listening standpoint, they put it considerably higher than maybe we would. Here's
my theory on that. I have a theory. I always got theories, right?
Good.
I think that if you're not a huge Tom Petty fan, and you got to find Free Falling, you're on Spotify. I think I'll go and scroll through, and you look at the album. If you're scrolling through and you don't know any of these songs, the title Zombie Zoo is going to make you think, oh, maybe that's weird. That might be fun. I'll put that on. That's my theory on that. So it's not necessarily that people love it. It's just people think, what the hell is this? So,
yeah, usually the people put on the first song, and then if they're just album tracks, like the streams just kind of decline as the album goes on. So it's interesting to see it at number 12 with that many streams compared to all these other tracks we've been talking about.
Okay, we've got some outtakes in this session too, though.
We do.
I went through them. We're going to get into this again with our producer for the day. I think they're both solid album tracks, but I don't think there's I don't think there is a standout. I don't think either of them are stronger than, let's say, Depending on You, Department Song, or A Mind with a Heart of Its Own. So when I get into my producer for the day, and I kind of did a bit of a curveball on you on this one, I want to talk about that a little bit. But Waiting for Tonight. So it's a minor key tone, and it's got a very famous girl band at the time on backing vocals, the Bangles.
The Bangles. Cool. I think this is a really strong song, and it did well commercially. It peaked at 6 in mainstream rock chart, number 1 in adult alternative airplay when it was released after the fact. And the genesis for the song, I think we were discussing it, alluded to it earlier. We're not exactly sure, where it came from. It was the same session as Travelin', or it looked like the same credits. credits on the on Discog, but it's just Tom and Mike with Draculius on the drums. And I think maybe this is another situation where Draculius added the drums after the fact, perhaps.
Right, maybe, yeah.
For playback. And then the Bangles on backup vocals. So it wasn't the Heartbreakers playing. They have no credits on this, as far as I can tell. So I do consider it a Full Moon Fever session track, and I think it's, you know, better than, to me, the Byrds cover. It's better to me than Zombie Zoo for sure. So I would certainly add it.
Okay. But yeah, that's interesting, because when you do look at playback at the liner notes from Nobody's Children, so Traveling's a 1988 outtake from an aborted Heartbreakers album, is how that's listed, right? And then Waiting for Tonight is from 1988 session. So again, I'm thinking that it could have been, you know, Mike and Tom, or always Tom solo credits, but it could have been from those same sessions where it was, maybe this was one that was intended for the Heartbreakers. And I don't know how the Bangles came to be involved in it. I'm not sure. Do you know? You ever come across anything and Tom talking about
how they came in? I have no idea. He just said that they came in, they were all talking at once. He was trying to figure out, like, because he's very, you know, slower drawl and like very easygoing, but they were all hyper talking over each other, and he was trying to figure out who was saying what, and when asked a question, he was getting 3 different answers. But he said they did a good job on the backing vocals. And I think acoustically it does fit on the album. I mean, it's very much acoustic guitar, and then I think the backing vocals fit with what they were doing with Jeff and Tom throughout the album.
Do you think if you think about, if you were going to put, because you'd put it on side B, you wouldn't be putting this one on side A, right? But if you've got, because I think later on we talk about, if you moved a Face in the Crowd on there, do you need another minor key song? That's my only, and like we'll get into this more in our Producer for the Day thing, but that's where I sort of think, yeah, I don't know if it does exactly fit. But again, yeah, the Bangles backing vocals are fantastic, because those girls can sing, man. Their debut album, I don't know if you ever listened to that album, it's fantastic. That's a great record. And I'll tell you this, you know, I'm a 50-year-old man now, but when I was an 18-year-old boy, Susanna Hoffs, oh my Lord, I would have done anything for that woman. Don't Treat Me Like a Stranger.
B-side to I Won't Back Down. It looks like only Tom and Mike of the Heartbreakers played on this one as well. Jeff Lynne produced it, so this was definitely part of this Full Moon Fever sessions. I do think the jangly acoustic guitars fit well again. I don't think this is a fantastic must-have song. I think Waiting for Tonight's better. But I think Don't Treat Me Like a Stranger is pretty good, and I think I would add it if we're adding a couple and taking away a couple. I think it's, you know, the last one that would make the cut for me. I do like it. It was nice to hear it sort of after the fact, because it's any of these Full Moon Fever sort of B-sides, it's great to hear because the sound's so good and the writing's so good.
But again, and it is, to me, it is a B-side. And I think that, but I also think that Zombie Zoo is probably a B-side. So again, let's get straight into it then. Let's go into, because I mean, I don't know, you're not considering Traveling as one of the Full Moon Fever session outtakes. Then, right?
Traveling, I didn't. It's a Heartbreakers played on that one. He said in the book it was the only Heartbreakers track during these sessions. And then there was also Down the Line, which has horns in it, and I believe it's from the same era. And I don't know what it was meant for, but it was a B-side for some of these. Yeah, I think it was actually multiple. It was B-side for multiple different versions, international versions of different singles. But I didn't include it because I just don't think it fits.
Okay, yeah.
So those are the other two. So let's talk about which you sent me a couple of sequences. Which one did you decide to pick?
I went with my abbreviated one.
Okay.
Just to provide a little bit of contrast to what you did, because I think it'll make the conversation a little bit interesting. So what I did was I'll run through very quickly my complete one that I sent you. So I'd gone with I left side one as is. Free Falling, Won't Back Down, Love Is a Long Road, Facing the Crowd, Running Down a Dream. That was my side A. My side A, at B, I went with A Mind with a Heart of Its Own, because I think that's another very good side opener. Waiting for Tonight, You're So Bad, The Apartment Song, Don't Treat Me Like a Stranger, Depending on You, All Right for Now. But I want to throw this at the listeners. If you think about this, if you go side one, Free Falling, I Won't Back Down, Love Is a Long Road, The Apartment Song, Running Down a Dream, then side two, A Face in the Crowd, A Mind with a Heart of Its Own, You're So Bad, Depending on You, All Right for Now. That is a tight album.
I'm looking at it now. This is the abridged version.
Yeah, so there's
trimmed to 10 songs.
There is no, and it's a short album. It's 33 minutes, so it's more like, you know, the first couple of albums. It's tight, man. There's no fat on on that record at all.
And are you opening side 2 with Facing the Crowd?
Yeah. I kind of like, I don't mind putting that. I was toying with either that or Mind with the Heart of Its Own because I did that on my full version. But I kind of like the idea of opening with a slower song and it being sort of, you know, because you get a bit of respite then from Running Down a Dream has just melted your face. A Facing the Crowd then just eases you back into side 2. And I think from there on it picks up. So, yeah.
I'll have to listen to this sequence some more. I didn't know which one you picked, so I wasn't digging into either one of them. But you cut the 2 songs that we were probably a little lukewarm on, the Birds cover and Zombie Zoo.
Yeah.
So as you mentioned, no fat whatsoever. I do love the All Right for Now as the album closer. I think You're So Bad is just getting buried, and I would prefer that to be maybe where Apartment Song is, but Apartment Song is a great song as well. I think you favor Apartment Song over You're So Bad, so it makes sense that you perhaps did that. But
yeah, I don't know if I do, you know, and like I said, I mean, I think I rated You're So Bad too low, and I think those 2 songs would be completely interchangeable. Here's what I thought is side 2. I think it balances it a little bit better. I think if you put You're So Bad on side A and Apartment Song on side B, I think side A is just off the chart, and I think it's a little bit imbalanced. And I think this way it provides just that little bit more balance. That's my only sort of rationale for it.
I like it. I mean, it's 10 great songs.
Yeah.
So not a whole lot to nitpick there. Do you want me to give you mine?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
All right. So just a little bit of backstory. I had Mary Jane's Last Dance on this, and we needed to talk about that. So there was a track called Indiana Girl that was worked on during these sessions, but we don't know if it was necessarily worked on during the Heartbreakers portion, or we don't know if it was worked on during the Jeff Lynne sessions or whatnot. But yes, the Heartbreakers ended up coming together, finishing that for the greatest hits. I did have a sequence where I had it right after Running Down a Dream to open side B, and it sounded so good after the little snippet about him doing the hello CD listeners and cutting out from the far noises, and then all of a sudden you go into Mary Jane's Last Dance. But really any song sounds pretty good after that. So what I decided, I conceded to your mockery, you know, of me and over Twitter DM, and I took it off, and I will just leave that on the greatest hits, and we'll talk about the great, you know, the ideal greatest hits sequencing when we get to that. But yeah, I start with the same first 3. Free Fallin', I Won't Back Down, Love Is a Long Road. I think that's perfect. And then for me, A Face in the Crowd goes to side 2, and I put You're So Bad at 4. I think that's where it belongs. And then I have Apartment Song at 5. And then Running Down a Dream. And then you get I don't know if that lengthwise, I think I did add it up and that worked out, but maybe I have to double check that. Waiting for Tonight, opening side B, with Don't Treat Me Like a Stranger right after that. And then Facing the Crowd is sort of a side B, you know, a little break in the action there. And then finishing with A Mind with a Heart of Its Own, Depending on You. So 2 up-tempo ones, and then closing with All Right for Now, as your pensive, quiet lullaby as you listen to this before you go to bed.
And I gave this a listen when you sent it to me, and I listened to it again this morning. It's a fantastic sequence. I think, honestly, this is probably the best one you've done. This, or my favorite of all the ones that we've done. I think this is the best one you've come up with. And you do come in, you can vinyl it. So I'm always the vinyl nerd. I know that you're not a vinyl guy. I'm the vinyl nerd. So I check the times, and you're in time. So you're just under on side 1, and you're well under on side 2. So yeah, what was that? Because I've written a couple of notes here. Going from Don't Treat Me Like a Stranger to A Face in the Crowd is really cool, because like you said, that drop back off in tempo is great. And man, You're So Bad, the Apartment Song together as a 2, I was like, oh, I think maybe I should have done that, because that sounds really, really good. But I still don't know whether I would have put them both on side 1. But very, very cool, man. It's a great sequence.
Yeah, I'm looking at the side A, Free Fallin', I Won't Back Down, Love Is a Long Road, You're So Bad, Apartment Song, Run Down a Dream. Maybe the greatest side A
of any record ever.
Humbly speaking. Greatest side A ever.
Oh, Jeff Lynne and Tom Petty, what do they know about sequencing records?
Yeah. Maybe they just needed a 16-year-old John or 15-year-old John to come in and decide what goes where.
Yeah, and we're gonna share these with everyone so you can have a listen. Going back, I think I'd pick my abbreviated playlist and your more comprehensive, fuller one. And I don't feel bad about taking off the 2 songs we did now. Feel a whole lot better, like I said, I think would have been a brilliant B-side. Because you've got it there. Yeah. Put that as a B-side because it would be such a wonderful, oh man, cool, they did a bird song. And then Zombie Zoo, I think, would be one of those weird, it's like, Heartbreakers Beach Party or one of those tracks where you think, oh, that's a fun bit of silliness, but I don't necessarily need it on the album. So fantastic track listing, dude. Hats off to you. You are the king of playlists after all.
Well, I'm going to listen to your version. I think it's going to be a nice 10 song, really nice 10 song.
It's so quick.
Yeah. Get in, get out. Leave them wanting more, right?
Yeah. But that's what this album does though too, right? And we talk about that because this album's, like you said, it's 12 songs, but it clocks in at just under 40 minutes.
Right.
So there's a lot of different ideas going on here. And again, I just love that. It's the Jeff Lynne thing. Let's make this as concise and as tight as possible. Let's not waste any space. Write for the song. Don't put a guitar solo in where you don't need one, unless Mike Campbell just writes one of the best guitar solos of all time. Then we'll leave that one in. But it's just such a fantastic album. And one that, again, I think it's one that when I got back into Petty and started really listening to him, it's one that I think I almost put it to one side and thought, well, I don't need to listen to that one really because I know that one. I need to listen to Let Me Up, I've Had Enough. I need to listen to, You're Gonna Get It. I need to listen to the Echo. I need to listen to these albums more that I don't know. So getting back into this one, listening to it again, when you come back to it, it's like, dear God, this is just, how do you improve it? Really? I mean, apart from, we've got our preferences, but to improve this as an album is damn near impossible.
Yeah, I mean, I think my first inclination, and I was going to ask you how you first heard Full Moon Fever and where it stood within your sequencing of how you got into Petty. But when we first were talking about doing a producer for a day, I was like, oh, I can't change this. This is perfection. But then I was like, I totally understand like all the OGs that are out there that are upset with us. I don't know if I'm just making that up, but people are like, "What? Just leave the albums alone." They're fine the way they were. I'm like, okay, well, I'll do it. If I'm going to cut up, Damn the Torpedoes or Hard Promises or whatever, I'm going to have to do it for Full Moon Fever as well. See if I can improve upon it. But where was Full Moon Fever in your, like you said, you already knew the album. So how much did you know about Tom Petty prior to hearing Full Moon Fever?
Nothing at all. I thought, in my mind, this was Tom Petty, right? Like the free falling guy. And I remember because when I was in the military, I joined the military at 16 years old. And when we go on our little breaks to the sort of the cafeteria thing, MTV was always on. This was always, Free Falling was always playing. And I think probably Running Down a Dream, I think I'd heard as well. So I went to the store that we had on the base. And I remember buying the cassette. So I definitely had Full Moon Fever on cassette. So and I wouldn't, as we both know, growing up, you didn't have unlimited money and we didn't have streaming. So if you only had 50 tapes, that's what you tended to listen to mostly, right? So I listened to this album a lot. And I don't know, I probably listened to side 1 much more than side 2, if I'm honest, because back then, I wasn't a deep Tom Petty fan. So this is, I think, where he sort of really kind of entered my consciousness. And then again, like I said, the Wilburys was most likely my very first entry point because my dad was a huge Harrison fan. I was a huge Beatles fan, and Dad had sort of said, well, listen to this. So I think that's when I first heard Tom's voice, but didn't associate it with him. So Full Moon Fever it's the first album that I heard of Tom Petty, for sure.
Interesting, because it wasn't my entry point. I knew about Refugee and American Girl and Breakdown stuff. I had to pack up the Plantation live disc, I think, before Full Moon Fever, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But just because it had a lot of the greatest hits on it and stuff that I was hearing on the radio at the time. But Full Moon Fever may be a diehard fan. But it's interesting you said that about Harrison, because I think there was a bit where he was like, I didn't really write with McCartney and Lennon, or he referred to them as my old band. But he really loved sitting and writing with Tom and Jeff and Roy Orbison and Bob Dylan, for those records, and where they're actually sitting around and face to face, like working on stuff, where he really didn't get to do that a whole lot with McCartney and Lennon.
Well, and even I was looking, I can't remember which, again, I think it was Zombie Zoo actually, where Olivia Harrison had said that even though George would never admit it, I think he really missed the band dynamic. I think that's one of the things that really drew him to working with Tom and Jeff and Bob and Roy is that idea where you've got a band again, because George famously, after an initial tour for his first album and the concert with Bangladesh, he never really played live. He just didn't play live gigs because he didn't like the hassle of it, and he didn't really have a band. So he did his solo records and he brought other people in to collaborate with, but he wasn't out playing. So course, when you do get to be able to sit down with, and especially, you know, again, he was in a band with 2 other pretty phenomenal songwriters. He's in a band again with 4 guys who can pull their weight. He's not, you know, it's not all on his shoulders, and just fun. And again, I every now and again, every 6 months or so, I go back and watch that little 23-minute Wilburys documentary, and you can just tell they don't give a damn whether they actually sell any of these records, whether anyone listens. They're just having an absolute blast doing them. And 1 song a day, they did. They recorded 1 song a day. It's insane, you know.
And they were just all very successful already. Didn't need the money, and just were doing this as a side project, and it, you know, turned out really great for all of them, I think.
So one thing we try to do, or if I remember, we try to do usually, John, is do an EP. Now, this is a criminal, horrible, difficult, nay impossible thing to do. But a 3-song EP from Full Moon Fever, I just don't know how you can go any other route than Free Falling, Running Down a Dream, I Won't Back Down. I don't, like, I couldn't leave any of those 3 off, even though I love the Apartment song, even though I love You're So Bad and Depending on You and A Man with a Heart of Its Own. I could argue for any of those as a deep cut, but which of those 3 would you take off to put something else on, some quirky little thing, you know?
I didn't think we were doing this because it's a sacrilege. But we usually combine our songs, whatever we pick, right? So if you're picking those 3, then I'm going to cheat. And I'm going to pick Love Is a Long Road, You're So Bad. Oh, this is even tough to pick 6. Because now I'm looking at Apartment Song and All Right for Now, and I'm like, that's like Sophie's Choice.
Yep.
So this is going to be a 7-song EP with the Apartment Song and All Right for Now as the. I'm going to use my one get a jail free card. We're going to have a 7-song EP for this one.
I mean, is that an EP?
I don't know. It is if we say it is.
Sold, done and dusted. I'm happy with that. Okay, well, that's Full Moon Fever, folks. It's a little bit longer, but, you know, we had to talk a long time about this album because it's so good, and I think we owed it to the album and to Tom and Jeff and Mike to do it justice. But until we meet again next week, keep listening to and sharing Tom's music. Try to be kind. Try to say I love you to someone at least once a day. Stay safe and healthy, and I'll be back with you next week to talk about the first song from Into the Greater Wide Open, Learning to Fly. Bye-bye.